Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, now I want to talk about the possibility of war. Will it be a world war? But I can definitely tell you there is going to be a serious war in this world. And I can tell you exactly what countries are going to be part of it. And honestly, I think this is World War III. And I just pray that there is no nuclear war involved. But this is something very serious. I have to warn everyone. Remember, astrology is the patterns and cycles of the planets. And when we look at the outer planets, these are the planets that really depict global events happening. I'm a Vedic astrologer, and for the most part, Vedic astrology has shunned the outer planets. But over recent time, they've started to accept them. And yes, the outer planets do not play as much of a focus in our individual lives because they deal with world affairs, they deal with generations, and they deal with the collective consciousness of everyone on planet Earth. So when I'm really looking for these major cycles that depict life-changing world events, I'm focusing on the outer planets. And the one outer planet that I'm focused in on right now is Uranus. Uranus is the planet that deals with sudden unexpected events. Its cycle is 84 years. And what I mean by a cycle is how long it takes a planet to go through all 12 signs of the zodiac. Now, you know, when you talk about the Saturn return, really people overplay the Saturn return. What is a Saturn return? It is merely when Saturn goes through all 12 signs of the zodiac. Every 28 to 30 years, it will go from one sign through all 12 signs. Saturn stays in a sign for 2.5 years. Now, let's get back to Uranus. And before I do, I have to remind everyone to sign up for my free newsletter. Go to my website. There's so many offerings there. Go to galacticcenter.org. There you can sign up for my free newsletter. Get all of my predictions delivered to your email address free every week, as well as my Patreon page. My Patreon is so important to me because it is our spiritual community. I do private classes there, so check it out. Join. And don't forget my Galactic Planner. I'm so excited. It's coming out this month of July. And if you go to galacticplanner.com, sign up for it, you will get the first month free. See if you like it. Try it. It uses your individual birth chart and tells you every day what to be wary of or where to take action. So galacticplanner.com, and don't forget I'm starting my school over this summer. If you want to learn Vedic astrology, go to universityofvedicastrology.com. Now let's get back to Uranus. That planet takes 84 years to go through all 12 signs of the zodiac, and it stays in a sign for 7 years. Now sidereally in Vedic astrology, it just went into Taurus. And it is here for 7 years. And one thing I want you to know is the last time that the United States was in a world war was when Uranus was in Taurus. It happened after the bombing of Hiroshima. I mean, not the bombing of Pearl Harbor, excuse me. The bombing of Pearl Harbor, which happened in December of 1941, where the Japanese attacked the Americans in Hawaii. This was where Uranus had just pretty much gone into Taurus. And then on top of that, while Uranus was still in Taurus, this was also when the United States bombed Hiroshima and ended the war. All this happened within that 7-year cycle of Uranus being in Taurus. So apparently all this happened approximately 84, 85 years ago, because Uranus has returned to this sign in Taurus. And yes, I've been warning everyone about Mars being in Taurus, which is from July 12th to August 26th. There will be so many things heating up that are leading to war at this time. And yes, these elections, whether they happen or not, are tearing the United States apart. We have the most two polarizing people running for president. Do I think Biden is going to, in the end, be running? Absolutely not. And I've said it many times. His chart is very difficult. So President Biden, his midheaven sits at 26 degrees of Leo. And the midheaven is the highest point in a chart. It is your career, it's your public image. It is your social standing, and it is his career as president. But here's the situation: transiting Saturn, stationed at the end of June at 25 degrees. 25 degrees of Aquarius. And so therefore it is exactly opposing his midheaven. And actually the exact opposite to the midheaven, which is the highest point in the chart, is the lowest point in the chart, called the IM Colii, which is the IC, the nadir in a chart, which means the focal point, the lowest, darkest point in a chart. It's the opposite of the midheaven. Therefore, his nadir, which is the seat of power, and it can deal with the end of life too. The nadir deal is at 26 degrees, right there in Aquarius where transiting Saturn has stationed. So it pretty much means his career is over. All right. So I can't see him. Not only do I not see him as president, but not running as president. So there's a lot that's about to change and come down. We'll see it. These presidential debates have pretty much woken people up to the condition that he's in, which, looking at his chart, I can see. But moving on to about the war, the most significant thing that I see happening, first of all, is about Uranus being in Taurus. Now remember, Mars is a trigger, right? Mars goes through the zodiac every 2 years. And when we have these outer planets that represent the world events, such as Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, as we watch those three outer planets, they depict global and world events. And therefore, that's why in Vedic astrology, they don't look at it in personal charts, although they do affect a person. Because when you put these outer planets together with personal planets, they totally change their energy. Let me be confident and make you assured of that. But going back to these three outer planets, watching where they were and triggered in times of war, we're looking at some very serious situations again. So the last time that Uranus was in Taurus was about 84 years ago, during the time that the United States became involved with the Second World War. And Mars is the trigger. Mars triggered all of the events before. And Mars with Uranus is going to be in Leo with Uranus from July 12th through August 26th. Watch how things heat up in the world. But the most important thing that I see happening concerning war is when Mars starts to go retrograde, because when a faster moving planet turns retrograde, whatever that planet's about becomes the most impactful thing going on in the world. Remember, it's like when Mercury goes retrograde, everything goes haywire, everything that Mercury rules. Mercury rules communications, travel, everything goes haywire. We become more forgetful, travel plans get canceled, or there's all sorts of problems with traveling, right? Or communications. We've seen that at work. But Mars going retrograde, Mars is the planet of war and violence and hate and anger. And Mars is going to go retrograde December 7th, 2024. But in the whole process that it starts to slow down months before, it stays in signs for a lot longer. And in October, when Mars is slowing down, and Mars is in the sign of Gemini, this is where the United States has 4 of its most important planets. And in the month of February of 2025, Mars is going to station exactly on the sun of the United States chart. That is violence, and violence to the leader of the nation, the president, in other words. So we're going to see that. Now, let me scoot over and let me show you a few of the charts of the countries that I think will definitely be involved. Well, first let's put up China. Now, let me point out that December 12th, 2024, Mars is going to station and come to a stop at between 11 and 12 degrees of Cancer. So what I did was I looked to see what countries had this particular degree marking, because this means they will have involvement with the war. And there was plenty of them. But the most important is going to be that degree around 10 to 12 degrees of Cancer or Capricorn. Oppositions are just the same as conjunctions in my book. So we're going to look at those opposing degrees. So putting up the chart for China, if you will look at where the moon sits, it's at 10 degrees of Capricorn. That is vital. And I want you to know we're going to be looking at Pluto a bit too. Pluto is the planet that rules nuclear energy. When it came into being in the 1930s, that's when they discovered nuclear energy and invented the atom bomb. So looking at this, we see, okay, China has 0 degrees of Capricorn. But let's look at their leader, Xi Jinping. Pulling up his chart. He has Moon K2 at 11-10 degrees of Cancer, right where Mars is going to be stationing. He is going to be enraged, and he is going to be pulling the trigger on war with Mars stationing on his Moon K2, and of course Rahu is always tied in the opposite position at 10 degrees of Capricorn. Okay, and if you'll notice, his sun sits at 0 degrees of Gemini, which is actually the placement of natal Mars in the United States chart. We're enemies. Okay, so moving on to the next chart I want to pull up, Russia. Russia has their moon at 9 degrees of Capricorn, and their K2 sits at 14 degrees of Cancer. In the United States chart, Their Rahu sits at 15 degrees of Cancer. So I'm going to pull up the United States chart as well. Pulling up the United States chart, here we have Rahu right at 15 degrees of Cancer, and Mercury sits at 3 degrees, so while Mars is slowing down and crossing over Mercury, Mercury does rule the 10th house of this chart. And let me just say, transiting Mars will be on Mercury around the time of the elections, okay? Yes, this is serious stuff. And so Russia is tied in, China is tied in, the United States is tied in. And I also pulled up Zelensky's chart, the president of Ukraine. His sun sits at 11 degrees of Capricorn, and his Mars sits at 6 degrees of Cancer. Very interesting. Even his moon is in Cancer. So he's tied in with all of this as well as Japan. Japan has Saturn at 15 degrees of Cancer, right where the U.S. Rahu sits. Wow, no wonder we have karma with Japan and we were at war together. It's very clear here. But another thing that I've been seeing that's coming up is during the time of World War II and the bombing of Pearl Harbor, which happened December 7th, 1941. Pluto was around 12 degrees of Cancer. This is a very interesting place because look at the United States chart up here. I mean, Pluto sits in Capricorn, and Pluto takes about 245 or 6 years to go through all 12 signs of the zodiac, 244 to 200, around that it comes back. And right now, the United States is going through a Pluto return. If you look at where Pluto is in its birth chart, Pluto's come back. That's the first time it's ever come back. It takes that long. Pluto moves that slow, 46 years. So what we're going through right now is Pluto opposed Pluto. From the chart of the bombing of Pearl Harbor, Pluto during World War II was in Cancer, opposed where it was when the United States began. The chart that we have for the signing of the Declaration of Independence, July 4th, 1776. Pluto was in Capricorn. And Pluto was in Capricorn, where Pluto is opposing it during World War II. So Pluto during World War II was in Cancer in the 8th house of the United States chart, right in between the Mercury and the Rahu. And now we have Pluto opposing that degree. Pluto is nuclear war. This is a possibility. Things have to get under control here now. This is serious stuff. So just to give you an idea, and I also found connections with the chart for Iran. So this is pretty much, and Israel. I forgot to mention Israel. Israel has their moon at 11 degrees of Cancer. 11 degrees of Cancer. My goodness. And Pluto in their chart sits right with their moon in Cancer. So let me just say this. I am tying in all of these countries by this Mars retrograde when it stations in Cancer. So it is tying in Israel. It's tying in Ukraine. It's tying in Russia. I didn't see connections with, I looked at all the other countries. These are the countries that connected. So once again, Israel, Iran, the United States, Japan, China, big time, and Russia. These are, and I did say Ukraine, Japan. These are all the countries that are going to have at it, and it's going to be serious. I'm seeing serious things happening. And let me just say, I do think we're going to see the signs of what's to start in July, around the United States elections. In October, November, it's going to be all out hell. I'll fill you in as we get closer, because we have eclipses. We have Mars slowing down, crossing over all the planets in the United States chart right around the time of elections. Then we have Mars going into the 8th house for the United States. Very dangerous and stationing. So we're going to see some very, very serious war coming forward. I hope I'm wrong. But what I've done is extensive research, studying charts and the historical events to tie in where the planets were, what they represented, and what they caused previously. So therefore, with the study of cycles, which is what astrology is, we will see similar events. That's my take on this. So with that, I think I'll close. Remember, if you would like more information on me or you would like a reading, go to my website, galacticcenter.org. And remember, if you want to become one of my students, go to my university website, universityofvedicastrology.com. Thank you.